I'm pleased to announce that Bassline Publishing has just released a brand new book in collaboration with Virtuoso Bassist Stuart Hamm. This new book is titled Stuart Hamm Bass Transcriptions: The Early Years, and it covers material from Stuart's first 3 albums, Radio Free Albemuth, Kings of Sleep, and The Urge. You can get this book on basslinepublishing.com and of course on Amazon as well, and I'll post links to both of those stores in the description below. So to mark the release of the book, I thought it'd be a great idea to get together with Stuart and talk about his recollections of writing and recording these albums, and also talk about the basses that he was using at the time. So without any further ado, please enjoy my interview with virtuoso bassist Stuart Hamm.
Okay, so to everyone who's watching this on Facebook or YouTube or wherever it might be, please welcome my special guest for today, Mr. Stu Hamm.
What's up?
What
How are you, Stuart? It says hold fast.
Hold fast, indeed. Hold fast.
Good advice for these times, I believe.
Oh God, yeah. So look, Stu, we're here to talk about this this new book that we've put together. I don't think you've got your copy yet, have you?
Not yet, but my first question is, who is that on the cover?
Well, you tell me.
I don't know. I've heard Chris Pratt. I've heard I don't know. I guess that's a young me with a lot of hair. I like the hair though.
Yeah, that's a lot of hair. Yeah. So this material that's in this book, this is the Stu Hamm, The Early Years. This book is, and it's covering Radio Free Albemuth, your first album, Kings of Sleep, second one, and The Urge. Music that's 30 years old now, I guess.
Hard to believe.
Yeah,
it's hard to believe that I guess I have been playing bass 49 years.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a long time. I mean, how old is the electric bass itself? Like 70 something, right?
I can't remember. It's 50 something for the P bass, and then 60 something for the jazz. But yeah. I mean, you were there early, really.
Right time, right place.
Yeah, absolutely. So look, we're talking about basses, and my first question here is about the bass that you used on these records, the Kubicki, and I just wonder how you discovered the Kubicki basses.
You know, it's just the oldest story in the book is that as you recall, bass player used to be a little 10 to 15 to 20 page insert at the back of Guitar Player magazine, and I just moved to LA. Was living with Steve Vai in his house, sleeping on the couch in his studio, and he was just sort of starting to get known. And so we would always, check out the Guitar Player magazine, and there was just an ad for this Kubicki bass, and it looked cool. So I went down to the NAMM show, I guess, to play with Steve, and I believe he was playing the Charvel booth, and I walked by and I found out where the Kubicki booth was, and I sort of circled it a couple times and finally got up the nerve to just get up in the stand and play one. And immediately, the cool thing about them is that, the laminated necks makes it really stiff. And the way that with the bridge mechanism, also the strings are super taut, just really high tension. So if you're trying to get that Stanley Clark snap, unless you're Steve Harris, you're going to break your fingers. But with all the resistance, a lot of the tapping, it really spoke with all the brightness how solid that neck was, really helped it. And I just sort of started playing the versions of Flood My Tears and Foggy Mountain Breakdown, this tapping stuff on the bass. And believe it or not, not everyone was doing at the time. This has got to be 84, 83, 84. And it sort of got a crowd, and it got Phil Kubicki's attention, and from then on, we just started a relationship.
Fantastic. And like you say, not everyone was doing that back then.
Can you believe it?
Yeah, I guess the only person I can think of that was doing similar sort of stuff, I guess, would have been Billy Sheehan, but I can't think of anyone else.
Well, I mean, it's. I mean, obviously, people have been doing that forever, so I'm not going to claim that I invented it. And everyone. I'm just a product of everything that came before me. I stole a little bit from Mingus, a little bit from Alphonso Johnson, a lot from Chris Squire, and blah, 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 blah. Jeff Berlin, Stanley Clark. It was a really exciting time. Jocko, was current at that time. But it really came from, the piano stuff that I was doing. And after I saw Jocko on November 8th, 1978, I never really thought of the bass as like a solo instrument. And I've been, studying piano all my youth. And I just, in trying to transfer some of those solo piano pieces to the bass, the technique sort of invented itself. And then I found situations to sort of put it in with bands I was playing in, and just started working on the solo bass repertoire. And yeah, and the bass, which is actually right here.
Hey,
there it is. Look at that, number 45. On the
look at
on the light. I don't know if you can see it.
yeah, 45, yeah.
Yeah. So there it is. It's in pretty good shape. It's pretty beat up. I played it on a gig a few months ago at the Baked Potato, and boy, it's a funny bass in that it's a bit like an alembic. Where I remember playing this on the Arsenio Hall show, which was a late night talk show here in the U.S., and we're doing a sound check. I was playing with a singer named David Beerwald, and the sound man said, "Hey, bass player, that sounds cool. Did you bring a bass?" So you know, the tone of it was really great for sort of my solo playing. As far as in a band setting, people are just so used to hearing a P or a J bass or something, you know, or an SVT, and this was something different. And of course, something new and different scares people. We fear change, which led to I actually just got back. It's amazing. Right before Christmas, out of the blue, I got sent back the first urge that Fender made me with the P bass pickup in the middle of it.
Oh wow!
To satisfy Joe Satriani's lack of love for the sound of the Kubicki bass while playing his music. Well, the great thing about it that really helped, number one, I mean, it's a short scale neck, right? It's 32. So for some of those reaches, it was helpful. The string spacing's a little closer together as well. So now that I've been playing for 49 years and I'm getting a little older, now I'm trying to play that on a 34-inch, you know, full scale, and it's not like my fingers are growing. Of course, the best thing was the detuner headstock.
Oh yeah.
Which is that cool thing about that is that if you play the open D, you can still fret the E flat and the E, and so you don't have to change the fingerings.
Yeah, so your octaves stay the same, don't they?
The octaves stay the same, whereas now if I try to play like Black Ice, right, on my Warwicks or on my Fenders, with the hip shot, you know, I can tune it down, but then if I want to do the tapping part in the middle, right, the middle part, if I had the open D, I'd have to play the A and the G string as octaves, and then the E and the D string as minor sevenths. And
yeah.
I'm not Michael Mannering. I'm just not that smart, you know, to figure out all those tunings. So it's nice to have back, and I play it, and it is what it is, and it's still. I hadn't played it for years, and it was the 1-year anniversary of Phil Kubicki's passing, and they had this beautiful ceremony in this hillside in Santa Barbara overlooking the ocean. It was just incredible. So I whipped it out, and it was still in tune after, I don't know, 10 years in storage. So, because you know, the laminated necks, I mean, it doesn't, it's, yeah, it has a ring to it and a sustain. It's just not what you're used to in a bass with the, you know, maple neck and rosewood fingerboard or whatever. But yeah, I mean, and again, the tension and everything really got into place, and it certainly helped me create what I'd started playing on, like my old Fender or whatever else bass I was playing back then.
And is that the only Kubicki you've still got then?
No, I've got that one, and I've got the white one, and I believe I have one more in storage hidden way back there. I don't know if it's the red one, the yellow fretless. I don't have the Raider bass. I do not have. Oh. You know, basses come and go.
Yeah.
Basses come and go.
So the white one, that was like a precursor to the Urge, as I remember, because you put the P bass pickup in, didn't you?
You can edit this out, but let's go get it.
Yeah. Okay. Look at that.
Look at that. I mean, this bass is in really good shape. And wow, and Stuart Hamm Urge Tour sticker on the backstage pass. And it is stamped Fender Custom Shop.
Oh, wow.
You can see that. So there it is. But yeah, it was through, I mean, again, it's to over or understate, but at that time I was sort of doing things that people weren't used to hearing on the bass, and it attracted the attention of Fender, and I certainly helped. I think a little, to agree to by playing a lot of dealer meetings, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, helping Fender decide that they wanted to, they took over making Kubicki's for a while, and again, Joe. Like I said, they're sort of tweaky sounding basses. So if you're used to hearing a P bass, so the first thing we had to do was, this is the first bass where they put the P bass pickup in it. And then we had to figure out how to do the knob, the switch. The switch is, when it's down, it's just like the regular two Kubicki's. If it's in the middle, it's all three. So you can use just this one, these two, all three, just these two. And then when it's up, it's just the P in the middle.
Right.
So totally functional all around it. And that did lead to, eventually, when that was back in the day, let me put this away, hang on. People, the guys I was playing with, Steve and Joe, were, doing these deals with Ibanez and stuff like that. And I talked to some different guitar and bass companies, and it finally came down to, I had the chance to be the first bass player to have a Fender signature bass. And I mean, Fender, at a certain point, I love all my basses, but at a certain point, Leo got it right, and anything beyond a P or a J is just sort of like, icing on the cake.
Yeah,
fun stuff.
Yeah. That's an amazing honor to be the first guy with the signature.
They're beautiful, man. I've got the original, like the green one. Larry is my piccolo bass now, and I've got a 3 or 4 beautiful Urge 2s. The fretless is just incredible. Larry.
You had a ton of them, didn't you? I seem to remember on the Outbound record sleeve, you had them all made out and named and everything.
I've got most of those around there. My daughter's got a couple, and
Does she plays?
No, not currently.
No.
But they had it was a precursor to I guess the mini P basses. They built her a little miniature P bass, and it says in the headstock Fender Mistress bass. And then I had a fretless, beautiful, I still have it, fretless, or maybe she has it, fretless Urge 2, the full length scale, with some of her artwork on it.
Oh wow, cool. So going back to the book and the songs in it, we're thinking about your first album, Radio Free Albemuth, and I just wonder how your record deal came about.
I've been doing solo bass shows, opening up at a couple clubs, mostly a club called At My Place on Santa Monica. It's not there anymore. Opening up for singer-songwriters, Vonda Shepard. It was and still is difficult to find places to play as a solo bass player. But because it was so unique and I'm so charming and entertaining and musical, it got a little hype. And we recorded Flexible. I played bass on Steve's recording of Flexible, and he put it out independently. It eventually got distributed by Relativity Records, a guy named Cliff Coltreri. And he came to one of my solo shows and liked it and said, I said, would you like to, I said, I'd like to do a solo record, and they said, well, great. Can you do one for, I think the amount was $5,000. Wow. And I said, yeah, as long as I get 2 copies and I get to sign away the publishing for like the next 40 years. So they gave me a very minuscule budget, and it was recorded in Steve's first studio. And it was great. I mean, man, the first track, I've got Alan Holdsworth and Tommy Mars and Joe Satriani on it. I could have just quit them and I was ahead. But it's funny, on a lot of that early stuff, you're not really thinking about it. It was just it was a chance to record what I was working and playing on the time with the musicians I was playing with. So it's pretty cool. And those days, I mean, all those 3 records are pre-Pro Tools, So
yeah.
And that's what I sort of think is not that it doesn't take away from Fi's brilliance, but when you listen to all the doubling and tripling and harmonizing, he's just not hitting a button on an Eventide, that says harmonize this in this way. This is him on like a 4 or 8 track, reel to reel, punching in and playing the stuff correctly. You can't just move it around. And that, I don't know, deadlines are good. you know, and would you got to be on the spot to perform, not knowing that, well, you know, I can always nudge it back later or whatever. So Scott Collard played keys. He was a guy I did a lot of gigs. I would do solo bass. I would do bass and keyboards. It was Scott Collard, bass and sax, and Michael Collins opened up for. I remember opening up for Jeff Berlin and Vox Humana at the old Palomino Club.
Oh wow!
And Jeff came out and said, "Oh, you know, I'd like to thank Stu for opening, but you know, I could do this too if I practiced that." So it came about. It was fun. It was. I remember I got handed the first demo of the record when we were playing a very famous old club on Long Island called My Father's Place, and Joe, because that was where the record company was in New York, and they handed Joe a record. Look at Stu's record. Some guy just reached up from the crowd and grabbed it out of his hands. So.
Oh, nice.
But I also remember going into Bernie Grumman's mastering studio with Bernie and mastering that record, and having a little bit of a fight about, okay, at the end of Sexually Active, I just wanted to just chop off end like that, you know, like sex. I mean, you're doing it and bam, it's over.
Yeah, that's really sudden. There's not even a reverb tail or anything there.
There's nothing. And it was he was well, we don't usually do that, and I was like, well, what did I know? Breaking all the rules. So it was a creative time, and it was fun, and it was new. I hadn't, you know, didn't have a plan for being in the studio. Didn't really think about it. Just sort of did it. And then surprisingly, you know, I ran out of money very quickly. I'd written "Flow My Tears" for a muted trumpet melody, and Michael Barsamonto, the drummer on the record, was playing with Mark Isham. So I approached Mark Isham, sent him the demo, and he said he'd love to play it, but he wanted to record it in his own studio. And on top of like the $150 I was going to pay him for the track, he wanted $50 to pay his engineer. And I just didn't have the money. And I don't mean I didn't have the money in my record budget. I mean, I couldn't come up with $50 at the time. So I called Cliff Cultreri and said, I don't know what to do. The song needs some solos and I ain't got no money. And he said, well, we just signed this guitar player, an old friend of Steve's named Joe Satriani. And I said, Joe sat right on me. That's a funny name. And they said, well, how about if he's doing a record, why don't you play on his record and he'll play on your record. We'll fly up to San Francisco. So I flew up to San Francisco with my fretless bass, intending to put a fretless line on his song Always. And then we ended up recording him on Sexually Active and Flow My Tears and Radio Free Albemuth. And he just sounds great. It's a wonderful, beautiful solos he plays on them. And then that's how I met Joe, and bada bing, bada boom.
Bada boom. So I was just thinking about what you said about the whole thing being pre-Pro Tools. So when you get to something like Flow My Tears, the track you were just talking about, and you've got that whole middle section, there's no stopping, and you've got to get right through that entire thing, haven't you?
That's probably the most, well, that and maybe some like tappy slappy things from Call of the Wilds on Kings of Sleep. But yeah, that's one of the hardest, especially now on a longer scale bass, is super hard to play.
Yeah.
And also I don't wear my bass up like a Jeff Berlin bow tie anymore. I'm not cool enough to wear it super low like Flea or Trujillo, but because I got to get to it, but I'm not wearing it as high. And yeah, that's just, I mean, especially just to keep the tempo, it's a tough one, but it's great sounding record, still holds up, I think.
Yeah, I do as well. I think it's fantastic. So going into your second album, Kings of Sleep, did the label ask you to do anything different, or did you sort of freehand compositionally?
No, I think I was was full of confidence. And, at that point, I think for 2 years in a row, I had won the Reader's Poll for Best Jazz Bass and Best Rock Bass, right? Something no one's ever done or since. Thank you very much. I don't know if it's really jazz, but, I'll take it.
Yeah.
So I was feeling good, and I was just, my compositional juices were up. Everything was just kicking. I do know that I'd written a lot of that record thinking that Joe was going to play on it. And then he sort of shot up to fame-wise, and it became like a record thing. Well, we can't have him play all over your record. He's got his own records out. So that makes sense. So then I ended up meeting Harry Cody, who just worked out being great. He was in a band called Shotgun Messiah that Relativity had signed. He was going to be their Guns N' Roses. And yeah, I don't think there was really any conscious effort to Maybe, I mean, I was certainly affected by hearing the way that Joe wrote music, and seeing him sell millions of records. Where certainly, if I could reach that sort of audience, maybe I could sell, even a tenth of those, would be great. But it's, in that rock setting, it is a challenge to write music that features the bass in that way, but it still functions as a real bass and has got to have enough of a star name guitar out front where it's going to appeal to a crossover thing. So it's not just a bass album like Book of Lies or some of the, once I gave up trying to, get big record sales and just made the music that I felt like doing. So I don't think there was label pressure, but I was certainly influenced by what I was hearing, and that's what I was feeling. And yeah, the song Kings of Sleep itself was great. That theme I was playing with one of the Pointer Sisters in an army base in Hawaii. And the keyboard player was Kim Bullard, who's been with Elton John now for years and years. And he was sort of playing that. And then with the low D, it worked out great on the bass. And we were jamming that out at sound check. And then I read that William Gibson short story, and it just all came together.
Interesting. There's one of the pieces on the album that really stands out for me, and that's Terminal Beach. It's just such an unusual composition, I think.
Yeah, I mean that's based on the J.G. Ballard story, Countrymen, and boy, I'd originally wanted to. I still want someday. I want to do it with like taiko drums and timpani and all that stuff. But I don't know. Listening to Steve Reich's In C, and maybe it was before I heard too much John Adams, but my father was a contemporary of John Cage's, who used to come to our house and play poker every week, and I used to help prepare his pianos for his prepared piano concertos and stuff. So just sort of that ambient percussive piano. I guess it's trying to sound like a tuned piano. Just came up with it, and Amy Knowles, who was the percussionist in the David and David tour, first real big tour I did of the States, was with a pop band called David and David. I recently posted this hilarious video from MTV called "Swallowed by the Tracks," where I look even stupider than I do on that picture on the cover of your book. And so she played on it, and she played great. And that was again one of those things where I had an idea and we went in and we recorded it pretty quick, because I think it was not far after that, when I was doing the first record with Hamm and Smith, that they said, we were done recording for the day, and they said, we're all going to do solo pieces. Do you have anything? And I said, yeah, I've been working on something. They said, let's hear it. So I played it, and then Steve said, great, we're done. I said, what are you talking about? He says, well, it's a piece of nostalgia. And he says, well, we recorded it. And I said, well, let me hear it back. And I heard it back, and like the G string's a little flat, and I sort of fret out some notes. So I changed my strings, and I got ready. Okay, now I'm going to play it correctly. And it just sucked, and it got worse and worse and worse and worse, because being in the studio with Steve and Joe with no Pro Tools, man, it was just like, it took me forever to realize that recording was not an exercise in not making a mistake. It was that you have to perform, you have to capture a moment, and oftentimes the mistakes are the best part of it. It's just really learning to let go. So a lot of that record was that as well.
And I'm guessing Nostalgia wound up being take one then.
Absolutely. You burned all the rest.
Yeah. Going back to Kings of Sleep, you've got another classical piece on there, Prelude in C. And I thought about this earlier. You've not actually done any classical pieces since then, I don't think, have you? I just wondered why.
No, I did. What's the da 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 da? Yeah, on what's the name of that piece? It's on.
Is that on?
Just outside of Normal.
Just outside of Normal, yeah.
Yeah. That's the Albenoni, even though he didn't actually write it. That's the whole story. That man, I've been working on pieces. I mean, you're the guy that sent me Dr. Gratis or Parnassum. Thank you very much. Right?
Oh no, that was
Gollywog's Cakewalk.
Gollywog's Cakewalk, yeah. See?
Okay. You win. You happy now?
Yeah.
I've just never been able to get that up to a point where, for me, it's there. And that and Snowflakes Are Dancing, I can sort of play it, but I don't have the control over it to play with dynamically or really be expressive other than just trying to get the notes out. So for me, that doesn't really enter the realm of music, as far as what I'm capable of doing. So I don't know. I mean, not that there's pushback from, you can't play Beethoven on the bass, you can't do that. And just trying to figure out how, like in that diminished run in the middle of Moonlight Sonata, I've got to change octaves because I don't have enough frets. Do I get a 7-string bass? No, I don't do that. Is it sacrilegious? I don't know. It's just music. I went and heard Tommy Emmanuel playing last week, and he did some sort of versions of taking the essence of a piece. But I do try to remain, you don't really want to change keys on, Claude Debussy or Johann Sebastian Bach. That seems a little presumptuous. Not even when Gould did that, he could mess with the tempos and the articulation, but changing keys, I don't know. I guess you're saying I should work on some. Okay, I don't know.
Do you know what? It was only I saw an interview with you a long time ago, and you talked about doing all of the pieces from the Children's Corner, the Debussy thing, and I just it just stuck with me. I thought, I wonder when he's going to get around to that.
Well, yeah, maybe. The project I'm in the middle of now is I'm writing a whole bass curriculum for a company called Artist Works. It's a very it's really involved, and it's really going to be great, and it's really a lot of planning on my part. So when I get that off the books and a couple of recording projects and mix the new record that I recorded during the lockdown, then I will get right on finally learning how to play Snowflakes Are Dancing and Gollypop's Cakewalk.
That'd be amazing. I was looking at there was some old concert footage of you doing a concert, I think at MIT, late 80s, and you played the piece that became Te Extraño from Book of Lies.
Yeah.
Under a different name, I think. I just wondered why it took so long for that piece to find a home.
I remember we one tour with Satriani, we opened up for David Bowie at the old Meadowlands Stadium, which is in New Jersey, outside of New York, where the New York Jets and Giants play. Anyway, and it was super fun. Had all my friends from New England come down, and big rock star. And then the next night we played at a small club called Toad's Place in New Haven, Connecticut. That was like the biggest jump in attendance in back to back. And it was time for that solo, and I've been working on that piece because I love tangos. And I was even into Astor Piazzolla back then, and I remember instead of doing the usual crowd pleasing boom shake stuff, I started doing that, and I don't know, the crew went and told Joe that I was having like a nervous breakdown on stage or something. So I guess I put that back, and that piece, yeah, boy, that's a piece. I guess I could fight through it now, but to get especially the bit with the pushing of the frets and getting them to ring and shake. Yeah. And that's a piece I have to warm up and play with for a while. So again, it just takes to a point where I'm comfortable with how I can perform it, and when I feel it's done as a composition.
Yeah, correct. Going back to the book, obviously we're looking at pieces from your first 3 albums. When you look back at it now, which pieces do you think people would find the most challenging to learn? They're all hard, aren't they?
No, it's funny because there are generations now of players who that was sort of their first exposure to bass.
Yeah. Right.
Whereas, my mind was blown of hearing Jaco play Donna Lee, if you can believe that. Then people, that's no big deal. And I play with young guitar players where, hey, we're going to do some Satriani and Weiss stuff. At the time was like, well, it's so hard, and they just grew up with it. And I'm like, oh, Attitude song, that's easy. I played that when I was 9 years old.
Yeah.
Right. So for me, the tapping part in the middle of the I guess it's not called the Wild, it's Count Zero.
Oh yeah.
That whole tapping part in the middle, and especially this run in the middle of it's pretty I maybe nailed that once, and fortunately the tape was rolling.
Oh, there's that unison lick that comes out. Yeah.
It's kind of tough. But yeah, I'm sure it was a template for I experienced hearing people, sort of that seeping into other players playing, as well it should, because that's what you hear and you learn, and you're affected by whatever's out at the moment. So happy I could add a little something to the effort.
Yeah, I think you certainly added something. I mean, there's a lot of techniques that I feel like you really pioneered, like the double popping flamenco rake thing, and you certainly pushed.
Well, I'm glad you said it, not me, but yeah, I mean, everyone's been slapping the bass and playing triplets forever, right? No one can say they did this because upright bass players have been doing that forever. You know, as far as that one, maybe I do know that was one that somehow I didn't borrow or see from everyone. And when I started working on, I'm not kidding when I say necessity being the mother of invention, like just learning the fingerings for Prelude in C, and especially making it where the root note is always played on the E string and can sustain. Which is I love seeing other people's fingerings for it, because that and Terminal Beach, they're so logical, right? And that was a big thing of it. You could play it easier if you didn't want to have that boom, but that's the whole part of the piece, right? That's the whole point of the piece at one point. Where was I going with this? Brain cloud right there.
We were talking about the most difficult pieces, I think.
Boy, I totally lost my train of thought there. Let's rewind. What was it was I don't know. If you go back and rewind it, call me back up and I'll finish that thought.
That's all right. It's all interesting. So when you look at those records and when you listen to those records now, those first three, how do you feel about them when you listen to them? Do you sort of listen to them and think, "Oh, I wish I'd mixed something differently," or you know?
I definitely don't think anything of that. I mean, I'm super duper pleased that they were pre-Pro Tools, because theoretically now when I listen to any of the other records, like the 4 records or 5 I did with James Boblik, I could theoretically go, hey, and just outside of Normal, Windsor Muse, can we go back and bring the high end on the low hi-hat mic up a little bit? And we could theoretically do it. So maybe somewhere mentally that lets you know that if that's always an option, right? So deadlines are good. I love them. Sometimes they're a little difficult for me to listen to, just because of that seems like I've lived a dozen lives since the person I was when I wrote those, So on a good day, I can listen to them. I like Flow My Tears. I really like Terminal Beach. I like Radio Free Albemuth, and I like the song Kings of Sleep is great. I Want to Know, it's pretty good. Some of the ones like Count Zero and Call of the Wild. I mean, the bass lines are so busy. How can there be room for double kick drum and double guitars? Is like, wow, more excess, please. Yeah, I like them. I mean, they stand up. I'll stand by the first two. The Urge and my singing, well, that's another story. But,
I think they all sound fantastic, as you know. Tell us about the vocal tunes on the Urge then, because that was a bit of a change of direction, it felt like.
Well, I mean, that was certainly. I mean, there's some good compositions on that, and boy, what a great sounding record. I mean, Acacia Ryan, and the song Lone Star itself with Eric Johnson, man, just the sonic fidelity of that. It was recorded. I had a much bigger budget by exponential amount to do that record. A real studio, a real engineer. Got to bring in Tommy Lee, who sounded great, and it's really creative. It was super fun. But yeah, singing, I mean, that was Relativity was having some success then, and with starting to get into rap, but with Joe's records, with a couple other artists they had, and it was an attempt to cross over. Now I like to sing. I've sung my whole career. Singing backups is super fun, and I certainly believed in the songs at the time. I mean, Who Do You Want Me to Be Today is sort of a giant middle finger to everyone. And As Children, Eric Johnson plays beautifully. The song I wrote As Children with my 2 brothers, love that tune. I forgot I had rap on that record. I mean, I'm just so glad, man. We were going to do this video for If You're Scared, Stay Home, that I would be so canceled right now. And there was a little inkling of people co-opting. And by people, I mean like 2 people. If You're Scared, Stay Home for like the anti-COVID movement, the anti-vax movement, right? So if that video existed, we were just going to be like driving around LA in a convertible, like, shooting people we didn't like. I thought it was funny at the time. It would have been pretty bad. So it was experimental. It was cool getting Tommy Lee in there. The singing, I remember that I went in the first time to sing, and I went through it. It was Who Do You Want Me to Be Today? And then I could see the producer and co-producer talking for like 10 minutes. And I'm just, it's stone quiet. And they go, what do you like to drink? So they were trying to loosen me up, I guess, like that. So I don't know, man. We gave it a shot.
Yeah.
It was fun. The Urge is a cool tune. I love singing that live. It was, I mean, hey, man, it is what it is. It is what it is. The funniest story I'll say about that is that David Counter, God rest his soul, who was one of the main guys for Relativity. He's passed now. He became a really dear friend of mine. We used to go to baseball games all the time. And so, of course, they were all worried about like, God, what's it going to sound like when Stu sings, So I had to have this thing where it was Barry and Cliff were coming in, and we rented the studio on Hollywood Boulevard where they was going to play it from the first time. But David came by. We were recording at Rumbo Studios. It was Captain and Tennille's studio, and David came by like the week before and said, I got to hear, hey, Stu, he's from Texas. I want to hear what your singing sounds like. So what we did was there's this horrible record by a band called Refugee that's The Nice with Patrick Moraz, right? And they have this totally pompous art rock song called Grand Canyon Suite. It's just the worst thing you've ever heard, except for the keyboards. And so what we did was we came in and we sat them down and we put the 2-inch rolling, and then the producer hit play on the CD, and we played this Grand Canyon Suite that was just the biggest piece of shit ever. And to see my friend David go, the fear in his whole being, and when he had to look at me and say, "Yeah, it sounds great, really, yeah, I like it." My stomach hurts just thinking about it. It was a wonderful moment. What a wonderful moment to be alive.
That's fantastic. So, okay, well, that brings us kind of up to the end of the book, I guess. So tell us what you're working on now. You made reference to a new album.
Yeah, well, the big thing I'm doing now is finishing up the. I don't know if you're familiar with Artist Works, but it's really inclusive. The previous bass instructors included John Patitucci, who did a whole jazz course like a college, and also an upright course, and Nathan East. So it's really just a chance for me to go, from the beginning all the way to the back. Really, I mean, a lot of work, but it's a chance for me to just lay out my pedagogy. And if I was going to teach someone how to play the bass, this is how we're going to do it. So that's been fun. Going to go up to Northern California and film that probably at the end of February. Been playing with my band here in LA whenever I get the chance. Alex Skolnick is flying out from New York to play with me on Saturday, February 12th, right after my birthday. Come on down. Joel Taylor, my favorite drummer, and I have this woman named Andrea Witt who plays violin, viola, and pedal steel. That just adds. It's so nice to hear like the chorus in Radio Free, and now I can, like, when you hear the song Castro Hustle between slide guitar and pedal steel. It's heavenly.
Oh, that's the perfect tune for that, isn't it?
And we're able to do Big Roller. I've got to play the piano and the bass parts, but just some of the tunes that I'd written with 2 melodies I can finally do. And also during the pandemic, I managed to do a couple trips out to Sweetwater to do these recording workshops. One of the sessions was Joel, Alex, and I doing a couple songs just live, no click track, that we've done forever live, which was We Will Rock You, this reggae ska version of We Will Rock You that we've been doing. And then this new tune that I wrote called Hold Fast. And then this is really like the idea was to be a prog rock record. Okay. So, there's some of that stuff. That's why you heard the tracks I sent you. A guy named Randy McStein, who has toured with me. It's a great bass player too, but guitar player and singer. And just another voice, to have instead of like, that's always the problem when I write these songs and melodies. And I love melodies. I love my melodies. Who's going to play them? It's so hard to play a bass line, and then, you do a tapping thing, and then you play a bass melody. It just makes the whole project something else. And it's really hard. I mean, if you've got me, Billy Sheehan, and Jeff Berlin, the 3 will just separate themselves. But when it's me playing that sonically, believe me, I've tried it. It's hard to make it sound good. So what the heck? Have Randy sing some of the melodies, and then I had Bubby Lewis play some outro stuff that I wish you could do. So yeah, man, it's cool. It's going along. I'm mixing it with Javier Reyes, the guitar player from Animals as Leaders, and it's coming along. once he gets over his COVID bout, we're going to jump back in there and finish it up.
Oh, I can't wait to hear it. Cool. Okay, so Stu, thanks very much for joining us. We're talking today about the new book, which is out now, Stuart Hamm Bass Transcriptions, The Early Years. It's all in there. Available on Amazon, etc., etc. See the links below and all that. Stu, thanks very much for joining us.
Stu, thank you very much for hosting me.
Thanks for checking out my interview with virtuoso bassist Stuart Hamm. Really hope you enjoyed it. If you're interested in getting hold of a copy of the new book, please see the description below for links to Amazon and to basslinepublishing.com. You're also going to find links down there for the other 2 books that we've written with Stuart, books covering the Outbound album and the Book of Lies. Okay, thanks again for watching. See you soon.